It's available.
They're just going through details of Chris's excerpt, just making sure that they've got kind of the details correct. Yeah.
I was just going to let Vivi and Chris know
Sure.
that I'll be making my opener now. Just behind me. So don't be surprised if you suddenly sense a presence behind you.
I really have to want it.
Of course.
Well, and they're just so effective and like they just talk about I don't know the world. And which is me bad dad space not having a lot of yeah, my sponsors are already.
Oh, we don't just past 7 o'clock. Do we want to get started right away? Just a few moments.
A lot of books that I thought that were
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. If you do find books. First. So if you run across the don't worry about it.
Is there one in there? Oh, first?
No.
Just a quick note to all those watching online, we'll be getting started in just a few minutes.
But thank you, we're ready. We are gray. We are gray. We're gray. We're gray.
Gray? We're gray.
We're gray. Yeah.
Like this.
Ready? Ready to go. And Shannon's saying, and for voicing for Chris, maybe we might need a microphone. Since Debbie, you're not doing it.
Right.
Shannon would maybe need a microphone. If there is there one I could just grab?
So what I was thinking was because for the Q&A, I'll be walking around to get questions with the microphone. Then if it's a question for Christopher, I can return right away and pass it to whomever will be vocalizing.
Okay. But one of the interpreters is going to vocalize for Chris.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to read for him.
Oh, no, that's exactly it. So whoever is vocalizing for Chris, I can just hand you the microphone right after a question has been asked.
But not during the questions, during the actual excerpt reading, one of
Right.
the interpreters will be. So during the, not the question and answer part.
Oh,
During the-
I understand.
during
Okay,
the
so you
main
won't be reading Chris.
I won't be reading.
Perfect.
Yeah, so is there a mic available for the
Absolutely.
interpreter
This
for that
microphone will
part?
be available right away.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Beautiful.
And that will be Shannon, the other interpreter, who will be using the mic, not me.
Wonderful.
So just so you know who to hand it to.
Oh, no, of course. Oh, if you'd like, you can get underway. Perfect. I'll turn off and then turn on some things, and then we'll get underway.
Okay, great.
Okay, so first things first, Vivi and Debbie, I'm going to turn on your microphones right now. And now I'm just going to turn on both of the cameras and then we'll get started.
And Joanna was just saying, you just sign as you, you don't have to worry about anything, Chris. You just sign, you go right ahead. He said, whew, you didn't need to dab your forehead.
My shirt, my shirt. He just asked me how long you want me. 2, 3 quarters. He said, oh, okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Innuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. Delighted to see you here, both in person and online, for the Winnipeg launch of Rebellious Bodies and Radical Acts. Deaf and disabled artists raise the curtain on Cripping the Stage, co-edited by Alex Ballmer and Winnipeg's own Dabee Patterson. Yes. We're so grateful to contributors Vivi, Dabee, and Bryan de Guzman for joining us tonight, and of course to Coach House Books for publishing this book and for making the evening a possibility. We'll be hearing selections from all of tonight's guests tonight. Following that, there'll be an opportunity for questions from you in the audience. Please put your hands up at that point and I'll approach you with this microphone, which just ensures that your question is audible on the broadcast. I'll be back at the end of the event to review signing procedure. But for now, I have the great pleasure of introducing tonight's guests. Sitting here in the far left, Vivi Dabee is a lover of the arts. Her enthusiasm for literature and theater led her to the world of academia, where she studied theater and completed her English BA honors at the University of Winnipeg and her Masters of English at the University of Manitoba. Vivi is a vocalist, playwright, and performer. She is passionate about diversity and inclusion, accessibility, and literacy. She is co-host of the podcast, The Lens, Living Diverse, and is the audio description consultant for View. Vivi loves meeting people and hearing their stories. When she is not snuggled up with a good book, Vivi enjoys exploring all that Winnipeg has to offer with her family, friends, and guide dog companion. Bryan de Guzman, who was born in the Philippines but immigrated to Canada with his family 10 years ago. As a small boy, he would capture the attention of family and friends through his impersonations, goofy characters, or his latest dance moves. So when given the chance to ham it up in mime, Christopher knew it would be a short bit. Christopher feels fortunate to have the opportunity with his fellow 100 Decibels founding troupe members to show the non-deaf communities how naturally and beautifully the deaf can act and entertain the masses. Christopher has been professionally trained in mime, physical comedy, and storytelling by the award-winning Hot Thespian Actions, Shannon Guile. Finally, co-editor Dabee Patterson is a playwright, director, and actor. Trained at the National Theatre School of Canada, she was a member of the acting company at the Stratford Festival in 2023. She is in demand across the country as a consultant on crip aesthetics, accessibility, and as a dramaturge versed in disability aesthetics. She lives a wheelchair-enabled life in Winnipeg, 81. To start off the evening, please join me in welcoming Dabee Patterson.
Thanks so much. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay that I wrote that's in this book. And yeah, we'll just start with that. The title is An Urgent Call for the Inclusion of Disabled Artists in Canadian Theatre. I've been a working theater professional since the mid-80s. About 15 years into my career, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which has transformed my abilities and my artistic practice. I'm currently a full-time wheelchair user with an artistic practice that is more focused and vision-driven than ever before in my life. When I first started experiencing the effects of MS, even though they were mild, I thought I had to quit working professionally. All my training had been very physical. I believed actors needed to be physically versatile in order to work professionally. I didn't think audiences wanted to see physically disabled bodies on stage. I didn't think directors would be interested in working with actors with physical disabilities. I assumed the ableism in theater was justified. Just as you wouldn't hire a blind bus driver, why would you hire a disabled actor? I decided to transition to directing and writing, aspects of live theater that I could still do while remaining comfortably seated. But I missed performing. I tried various strategies to work around my disability, to keep acting in spite of my disability, but it all felt awkward and disingenuous. One day I was in New York and had just been to see Cirque du Soleil. I was still walking with the use of forearm crutches. I arrived in a restaurant where I was meeting some friends. It was kind of cramped, and when I walked through the restaurant, I noticed that the other diners were on high alert. People were shuffling their chairs or moving their bags or coattails in order to make sure I had room to get through. It struck me as funny that they would make such a fuss, but I also recognized that the feeling they had watching me walk through the room was the feeling I had had watching acrobats earlier that day. Seeing a person risking a fall, stretching themselves to the limit of their abilities is compelling, no matter where the limit of the abilities lands. That was the day I realized there was something compelling about the way I moved, that the story my body was telling was a story people wanted to hear. Theater happens in the body. When we watch theater, we're watching bodies on stage. The body of an actor tells a story the moment they walk on stage, whether they mean to or not. A person's age, gender, colors, rhythm, size, hairstyle, fashion sense, areas of tension, gait, all of these tell an audience something about who we are. And when we go to the theater, we're physically present with our bodies in sharing space with the performers. When a performer speaks, they use their body to create vibrations, which travel through the air and enter into our bodies as sound. It's an intimate, physical exchange. We breathe together, our hearts sync up, we respond viscerally to each other. We are doing it right now. As I learned to embrace rather than reject or deny or minimize or try to hide the transformation of my abilities and the story that my body was telling, I discovered the benefits of disability to my artistic practice. I felt I tapped into a deeper authenticity. Disability doesn't let you get away with artifice. You can't pretend to be something you're not. Disability demands a kind of honesty and vulnerability that I had never been able to access before. As a woman, I felt freed from judgment about my physical appearance. As an able-bodied performer, I was never able to shake off the feeling that aspects of my body were being judged or held up to some societal ideal of feminine beauty. Once I became disabled, I no longer felt like I was on display in that way, with no agency in defining what sort of image I wanted to present. There was no longer an ideal that I was supposed to be striving for. I could just be who I was. In my daily life, I found myself having to take greater risks, doing things physically that I wasn't sure I would be able to do safely. Things like crossing the street, working with power tools, carrying hot things in the kitchen. All these things I did routinely in my daily life prior to disability suddenly became risk-filled adventures. The capacity for taking risks fed into my work as an artist, giving me greater freedom to explore in the unknown. I learned to embrace the disruptions of disability as opportunities for invention rather than barriers to art making. If you need to get from one side of this stage to the other and you can walk, then that's the choice you will make every single time. Once you can't walk, every other possible way of getting from one side of the stage to the other suddenly becomes available to you. Now, instead of walking, you might crawl, roll, slither, shoosh on your bum, walk on your hands, ride on something with wheels. Be carried. The disruptions of disability give way to limitless possibility. Theater is ultimately a storytelling medium, and narratives have power to change society. Stories shape our beliefs, and beliefs guide our actions. The stories we tell matter. It's been proven that the act of telling one's own story can have positive physiological effects, such as relieving anxiety, improving health outcomes, and reducing pain. Stories have tremendous power. When disabled people are excluded from our storytelling mediums, our lived experience is never represented. When every story about disability is created by people without disabilities for people without disabilities, we are misrepresented. I started a disability theater company in order to support the development of disabled theater artists and the development of stories from the perspective of the lived experience of disability. I felt extremely privileged that I had the opportunity to get formal training and reach a level of experience prior to becoming disabled, and I wanted to use that privilege in service of others. From the outset, I was acutely aware that most people would assume a disability theater company would be providing therapeutic recreation activities for disabled people. No one would assume that disabled performers would be exploring complex ideas through a sophisticated aesthetic aimed at giving audiences a powerful experience of self-discovery. One of the first things we produced at Sick and Twisted Theatre was a cabaret called Les Mis, pun intended. The goal was to redefine disability on our own terms. All the emerging disabled performers were paired with mentors who either had a lived or a shared experience of disability, as well as an established professional practice in theatre. Mentors supported the development of the individual pieces that would be performed at the cabaret, but they also mentored the artists themselves. Performers were given free rein to create whatever they felt called to do, with 3 important caveats. They were not permitted to create a piece aimed at raising awareness about their particular disability. No one cares. They were not permitted to use the time to complain or perform suffering. We don't need to see it. They were discouraged from being content simply to express themselves and encouraged instead to consider what the audience needs to experience. These limitations were grounded in the belief that as disabled artists, we have a window on an aspect of the human condition that is underexplored in our storytelling media. We also believe that our experience of the human condition is deeply necessary for all people to understand themselves and their own bodies in the world. We would mine the depths of our lived experience to excavate precious treasures. We would use our disabilities to help non-disabled people recognize themselves in a new way. We knew that people would be coming to our first production with a certain set of assumptions and expectations. We wanted to undermine those assumptions and challenge the expectations, and we did. Audiences were blown away. My favorite response was, "I'm not sure what I thought I was coming to see, but that certainly wasn't it." They had never heard disabled people speak intimately about the experience of disability, about the ways we negotiate with vulnerability, about the way our bodies and brains surprise and delight us. The response told me that we had succeeded in introducing them to parts of themselves that they didn't know they were missing. Thanks. Now I want to read a piece that Vivi wrote with Vivi's indulgence. And it's a piece called A Meditation on Snakes and Sightlessness. Have you ever been asked, if you were a non-human animal, what animal would you be? Have you ever thought about it? I know the question seems like a frivolous one. The type of question you would read in a quiz from a magazine or ask someone at a party to quickly analyze their personality. On the surface, this appears to be the purpose of asking such a question. The answer providing immediate insight into who the interlocutor is, a creature who is either warm and cuddly or cruel and vicious. Well, I have been asked this question and I have given it careful consideration. It was a difficult choice, as I feel an affinity with many animals. For a time, I felt that I mostly identified with an elephant. One reason for this is that elephants have matriarchal societies, and I've always been drawn to, surrounded by, and sought out strong women as supporters and guides. In addition, elephants are found on the continents of Africa and Asia, which honor both parts of my ancestry. In addition, to think of myself in comparison to such an opposing species amused me as an ironic study in contrast, considering my stature. Then I thought that the wolf best suited me. Wolves are social creatures, and like them, I feel most at ease when I'm surrounded by my pack of family and friends. Finally, I decided that the dolphin was the most appropriate totem for me. Dolphins are also sensual creatures. Need I say more? On a more practical level, they rely upon sound to both communicate and navigate. I pondered this question again recently and was surprised to find where my musings led me this time. It occurred to me that being blind, I was particularly aligned with the snake, a thing of beauty that is feared. You are attracted to it. You want to touch it and hold it. It intrigues you because you do not fully understand it or how it moves through the world, sensing rather than seeing, and using its entire body to explore its surroundings. It is not like other creatures you have encountered. If you get too close to it, it could strike you. Then what? Fill you with venom? Or perhaps swallow you whole? This is how it can feel in the wild world of love and romance. Blindness to a potential partner is venom, the kiss of death to a romantic relationship. At first, you may be a curiosity, an exotic creature in the wild. People cannot help but be drawn in by your charm, your mystique, your beauty, and how smoothly you seem to live in this new skin you've adopted. But that is the nature of the snake, to shed its old skin and don a new one, is it not? Those of us who become blind undergo a similar transformation. This metamorphosis, however, remains irreconcilable. We share a kinship with, yet are estranged from, our fellow humans. Despite undergoing the process of reacquainting ourselves with our now sightless bodies and adapting to a new way of being, traces of the creature we once were linger inside us. As with the Ouroboros, we must find a way to begin again after the life that we have known has ended. Exposing ourselves to the world in new ways, we use our bodies to absorb knowledge and feel for a connection with someone who will see us in our wholeness. Some of us are able to traverse this apparent species divide between the blind and sighted and find the love we seek. Others are not as fortunate and are either approached with caution or are fled from in fear. There are those who, though they may be attracted to you, will not even approach you, as if to do so would fatally harm them. I promise, I will not bite you unless you want me to. You are poisonous, and contact with you would be deadly. How dare you confront them with their mortality, with the realization that the body is not eternal, is imperfect and susceptible to illness? How dare you force them to confront their worst fear, that they too may one day lose their sight and be plunged into darkness? More important, how dare you deny them the possibility of affirmation by refusing to reflect what they most desire to see, the appraisal and approval of one they have chosen and deemed worthy of their affection? Woe to those of us who do not follow this carefully choreographed mating dance. We are left to experience a sense of loneliness that feels like death, and like Medusa, are transformed into abhorrent creatures without cause. A tragic tale indeed. Medusa was the most beautiful of the Gorgon sisters, and a devotee of the virgin goddess Athena. She was pursued and later raped by Poseidon because she would not yield to his sexual advances as he worshipped at Athena's temple. Outraged at the desecration of her sanctuary, Athena took vengeance upon the victim rather than the perpetrator of this crime and transformed Medusa into a reviled reptilian creature. However, Medusa was crowned with, not cursed by, serpents, as the story would lead you to believe, and attained the gift of chthonic wisdom. In the end, Perseus murdered her because she did not see as others did. Her gaze was not one of affirmation. It was not a gaze that submitted to protecting the fragile male ego. It did not perpetuate the myth that worthiness could be sought and found in the reflection of another's eyes. It did not grant the unspoken wish to be seen and chosen, communicated in the exchange of glances that says, yes, I see you. I see you the way you see yourself. I see the way you want me to see you. I see you the way you want to be seen. Instead, Medusa's gaze was one of defiance that presented a challenge to Perseus, a challenge for him to behold and acknowledge the sacred feminine and to recognize Medusa as an equal. How could he treat her as an equal when he feared her? Similarly, how can I be seen as an equal if I am feared? If my blindness is feared? If the myths perpetuated about blindness are those of difference and dependency? I am blind, but I am not broken. Do not be afraid. Handle me with care, the way you would a snake, or any creature you admire, respect, and love. And now I'd like to invite Christopher to share some of his contribution to the book.
For sure. So starting off, I am Christopher Guzman. I am 38 years old, and I was born in the Philippines. I identify as deaf, became deaf after birth. I moved to Canada in 2010. And I took a program, an immigration program, to learn ASL. That was my first introduction to ASL as a language and written English as well. I was a very, very shy kid growing up. I was not easy to socialize with others. I needed a lot of encouragement to get involved. My grandma was instrumental in getting me out and involved with my peers, encouraging me to be involved, to make friends, to socialize with people my age, and to build relationships. She also introduced me to the world of dance, which really, really built that confidence that I was looking for. Dance has really helped bring me to be who I am today. It was a big part of my life, and it opened a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities that I maybe wouldn't have had. I was always kind of the silly, goofy guy, and that helped me get involved with other kids my age to feel myself and to feel more confident in who I am, which brought me a lot of happiness. Growing up in the Philippines, I did not have access to interpreters. I had to rely on lip reading, which is not great. I missed out on a lot of opportunities and I couldn't be involved to the fullest. I was able to partake in a small group of dance in the Philippines. But again, there were no interpreters. When people were speaking, there were no captions that I could read. There was really no accessibility at all for me at that time, which was a massive barrier and limited the involvement I could have. It was only when I entered high school that I saw other deaf people for the first time. It was a school for the deaf. And I was able to meet others who were just like me. They were teaching in sign language, a language that I could understand, a language that I felt connected to. And I realized that I could be one of them. This was an opportunity that I didn't have before in other traditional school experiences. It was extremely challenging. They were hearing teachers with no interpreters. The access was very limited. It was very, very challenging for me. So being able to go to a high school where there was deaf teachers and they were using sign language was instrumental. And I was able to gain exposure to language that way. My family also had never met a deaf person until I went to the school for the deaf in high school. That was their first experience meeting other deaf individuals. I was the only deaf person in my family amongst a group of hearing individuals who didn't really sign. So when I went to that deaf school and we met deaf teachers and other peers who were deaf as well, that was not only my first exposure to others like me, but my family's as well. And it was an opportunity for them to start learning in the Philippines. What we have is Filipino Sign Language, which is not the same as American Sign Language. My family communicated with me primarily through gestures at home before this. We communicated very basically through gesture. And so this was an opportunity for them to start learning Filipino Sign Language. Most of the time, my family still used our home signs, the gestures we use at home, not traditional Filipino Sign Language. And Filipino Sign Language and Tagalog are very similar in terms of their grammatical structure and the language itself. But going between Filipino Sign Language and American Sign Language, they're very, very different. So I had to start off by learning Filipino Sign Language. And then later, once immigrating to Canada, I had to learn American Sign Language and English, which very, very different from each other. The grammatical structures and the way you use expressions, it very, very, very different. So a lot of learning had to be done later on in life to gain that language. For me, what helped a lot was being able to use my personality. I've always been a silly, goofy, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. And being that way, I was able to manipulate and play with American Sign Language as I was learning. And in doing so, being able to manipulate signs and play with them, some of the teachers that I had noticed that I was on the creative side and that I enjoyed having fun with signs, and suggested that maybe I should look into doing some work in the theater. And that was my first ever experience with that. There was someone who had asked me, show me what it would look like mime it, act it out. What would it look like if you were riding a bike? And then I would have the task of figuring out through language or through gestures how to show that and how to mime it. So I worked with Shannon Guile, who was instrumental in teaching me how to hone in those mime skills that I had kind of naturally already been playing with. So she introduced me to a group of 5 other guys, bit of a guys group there, and I kind of got involved in mime that way. Initially working with them and honing my skills that way. And then later, Joanna Hawkins joined the group. Some of the other guys left, and just naturally it became a mime troupe between myself, Joanna, and then Jordan. We created our deaf mime group, 100 decibels. I do remember the first time our mime troupe was going to do a performance. It was for the Fringe Festival, and I was so nervous. And at the time, Shannon, our mime coach, she would always sign this, okay, as we're backstage, she would say, you ready to go? And she would always sign it like this, with her hands kind of shaking back and forth, which was the sign for gray. And it was always funny because she would say, okay, ready to go? But what she was actually signing was gray, go. And it was always just kind of something that was kind of funny. And we would tell her, no, that's great, that's great. But she would sign it that way anyways, which was really endearing. So that was the first time that I ever did a live performance in front of a live audience, a live public audience that I could see in front of me. And being able to feed off of their reactions, to see the laughter, to see the emotions. I really enjoyed that. It was really rewarding to see the laughing and that the audience really took to it. And something that inspired me always was the old cartoon Tom and Jerry. It was one of my favorite cartoons as a kid because it was so visual. So much of what you saw in that cartoon was through body language and expressions and goofiness. And so I really tried to incorporate some of that into my comedic style, and that influenced some of the characters and some of the ways that I would sign and how I learned to mime and connect with comedy. I think that was one of the largest things that had an influence on my performance and to me as a mime performer. So I can be a dancer, I can be a comic, I can be all of these things. And that's kind of in a nutshell, but I really want to give to future generations and future deaf children to show that they can grow and develop in a way that maybe wasn't as easy for me, but to give them a chance to have that opportunity in an easier, more accessible way, and just provide a new way for the future generations.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Christopher. Oh, we have some time now to answer any questions you might have. For anybody up here, Vivi or Christopher or myself.
Absolutely. So if anyone does have any questions, please just put up your hand and I'll wander up to you with this microphone.
And if you don't, I'd have some questions for my friends here. Okay. Vivi, I'll ask you first. As an artist, what would you say is your disability superpower? Or what is it about your disability that makes you a better artist?
I would say my disability superpower and the thing that makes me a good and better artist is my ability to listen. And that may seem obvious because I'm a person with sight loss, but I don't just mean listening with my ears. Kind of like I reflected in my piece, I mean listening with my whole body. So I not only, when I'm in a rehearsal room, I'm not only listening to my scene partners, my fellow actors, all of the dialogue and all of the material we're working on in the script in the space. I'm also listening to the vibes and the energy that everybody's giving each other and that I'm giving off, because I feel that that's part of the ecosystem we use as artists. We're not just two-dimensional entities, like we're bringing our whole selves to the creative process. So I want to bring my whole self to the creative process, and in so doing, I want to open myself up to the whole creative process. So for me, that's listening with every part of me and being absorbent and taking everything that I can in as much as possible, which sometimes is exhausting because when you're listening with everything you have, it does wear on your body, as Deb reflected. Like we're performers, we're doing so much with our bodies, but it is a gift. I'm glad I have it, and I'm glad I can use it because it does help me, and it helps me learn not only about myself but about my fellow performers, the people that I'm creating with. So in the spaces where things aren't spoken, I feel that I can kind of intuit what's going on. So that's what I would say. Listening with every part of me is my superpower.
Cool, thanks. Christopher, what about you?
My superpower. I mean, I think my deafness in and of itself is a superpower. I'm not able to hear anything. So, I mean, contrast to what Vivi said is I'm relying completely on my sight. I'm relying on what I see around me, the body language. I'm trying to figure out what is the intent? What are we trying to show here? What are we trying to emote? And what am I trying to capture through the dance or mime or whatever I'm doing? We're always striving towards the goal of whatever it may be for where we are at. And, you know, I don't want that to let that be a barrier. I want that to be something that I can always use to my advantage. I think my deafness adds to me as a performer. It adds to what I can bring as a dancer, as a mimer, as a comic, you know, and it's a way to show that deaf individuals can do just the same as hearing individuals can do. And, you know, I've said many different ways that I'm involved in theater, and through my various experiences, it's been very rich and rewarding. And of course, you start off nervous and you start off hesitant. You're not quite sure where it's going to go. But I think I've come a long way in those, and my deafness has been a way for me to show that and include it in my art.
Amazing, thanks. Does anyone else have a question?
What's your superpower?
What's my superpower? Good question. So funny. I asked it, I didn't consider answering it. I guess I think it has something to do with the way I collaborate with others and welcoming all aspects of the person, the other people into the room. Welcoming what the things we usually think of as weaknesses or things that we think we have to hide about ourselves. Kind of like welcome those into the rooms so that we can engage in a way that is just more authentic. It kind of strips away often when you're in a rehearsal room with a bunch of actors, there's a level of competitiveness in the room, and and wanting to put your best self forward. And when someone is disabled in the room, that goes away. And we're all there to work together, and we're all there to be goofs, and we're all there to be, like all the sort of broken parts about ourselves get an opportunity to shine. So I think bringing that out in my colleagues is my superpower. Yeah. Did you have a question? Same one. Yeah.
My question is about if you have thoughts or advice on doing theater with children, and I guess I would ask Chris, since you mentioned you're being a young person and learning doing performance, but if Debbie or Vivi had any insights, I would be interested to hear. I'm not sure how to elaborate this question, but just what any tips or advice or for doing theater with children in particular? Wondering about
With children or for children?
with children, yeah, like children's theater, like the kids are acting.
Cool. Cool.
I think, from a perspective, of being a deaf person who is in a hearing family, I think I would encourage more deaf children to be able to be involved in the arts and showing them that they can, but starting with basics, starting slow, and encouraging that growth and building their confidence. I think that's a key place to start, because once they have that, they can work on that and grow from there. So starting with building that confidence young.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Vivi?
I think one of the most important things for me when I was younger was being exposed to theater and learning that eventually it was a place that I could belong. And so I think some of the great work that Sick and Twisted does with audio described performances, just to engage kids with theater, to make it accessible for them, first of all, so they first know that it's a space that they can be in as a spectator, and then moving beyond that to exploring ways of engaging in theater. I work at CNIB and I'm very passionate about theater, so I talk to my colleagues a lot about, how can we engage our youth in not only an appreciation for theater, but make them understand that theater can be a place for them to learn and grow and play and explore, because this might not be a space if they're attending school, public school, where the program isn't necessarily set up to accommodate them. Developing programs where they can attend, where they encounter other people like them, they're exploring in the same ways, they're learning together, and there's a sense of equality and equity. I'm very passionate about that, and that's one of the things I want to work on and do work on with my colleagues in my other work.
Sick and Twisted has started doing family shows, partly because I feel like it's really important for disabled kids to see disabled actors on stage. Just so they know that it's possible. That's certainly not something I ever saw as a kid. But I mean, interestingly, I feel like most actors really spend a lot of time trying to get back to a place of childhood where we didn't filter ourselves or censor ourselves. And so I feel like kids actually have a real edge as performers over grown-ups. Any other questions? Okay. We can call that a night then.
No, of course.
Thank you so much for coming.
So yes, thank you all so very much for coming. We will be moving along to the signing portion of the evening. So if you'll just allow me one moment, I'm just going to quickly rearrange this to a proper signing table, and then feel free to line up down here. You're very welcome to get a book signed before you leave. Please pay for the book. We'd be very grateful. We're also enormously grateful to all who helped make this evening a possibility. Of course, our incredible ASL team of Joanna, Sharon, and Christy. Thank you so much to Vivi Patterson for not only helping to wrangle with them this anthology, but also this evening, and to all of Coach House Press for putting it out. We're also so very grateful to Christopher and of course to Vivi for coming on board to be a part of tonight. So thank you all very much for coming and have a wonderful evening.